Good day to all of you. So in current demonstration, we will be covering running containers in a background mode. So I will be moving back to my terminal. So if I try to list all the images, you can see that in the previous demonstrations we have run the container, uh, but we have not really made the use of the detached mode, right? For example, we have run all the Ubuntu, Nginx, Alpine, Hello World, but we have not really made a use of detached mode. So I would like to explore with you what does that mean. So for example, if I try to run, let's say Alpine, as you would normally know that if I try to list all the running as well as inactive containers, you can see that I'm talking about the container which has already exited 7 seconds ago. So we already talked about this. If we do not have the running process, container will be getting terminated. So this is what has happened. If I try to run this Alpine container, it has already gotten terminated, right? So in order to do away with that, let me clear my screen. Docker run, I will be giving -i flag so that I will be running this container in the interactive mode Alpine. So if I run this container in the interactive mode, this particular let's see what happens. So you can see that I have got std in access, stdin access of this particular console. So if I try to use the command ls, you can see that I am able to list all the directories within the Alpine container. So if I switch back to my second different tab, Docker PS, so as you would normally expect, the Alpine container is up and running, right? So if I go back to my Alpine container tab, so I don't really have access to my shell prompt on my local host because I am only able to see the stdin for the container, right? So that is what we mean by detached mode. Since the container is not really running in a detached mode, I don't really have access to my shell. So I am no longer able to perform any kind of the operations on my local host, right? I need to make a use of the subsequent tab. So if I try to, let's say, so for example, docker stop 06c, so it will, okay. So if I execute this particular command, it will take some time, before give. So once this particular container is getting terminated, I will be getting access to my shell prompt on my local host. So now since I can see that that the container is getting terminated, I have got my shell back. So that is what we mean when we try to run the container in a detached mode, right? So since I run in the interactive mode, I don't really have access to the shell. So let's see if I try to run this particular container in a detached mode, what happens, right? So docker run, let's say -d Alpine. I would also like to d -i. So you can see it has given me the container ID, and if I try to list this particular container, you can see that this particular container Alpine is up and running, but I still have access to my shell. This particular container, again, I would say once again, so our Alpine container is up and running, but we still have access to our shell for our local host. I can perform whatever the operations I want, right? So that's what I when we try to run the container in a detached mode. So now let's look at one more example. Docker run. So I will be running Nginx container. So -p. So again, I will be using the port 8085 on the host and 80 on the container side, and let's say Nginx. So if I run this container, you can see that I no longer have access to my shell, right? Because what now I can see the std out of the Nginx container. I am able to see all. So for example, if I try to just give me a sec, 18 dot. I'm trying to establish container for this particular Nginx. So for example, if I go back to my terminal, you can see that there is some of the logs corresponding to the Nginx container. HTTP response 304, which means your web page is getting modified and is trying to make use of your cache, browser cache, right? So again, what I'm trying to demonstrate is I do not have access to my shell of my local host, right? I can only see the logs corresponding to that container, and I can only see the std out for my Nginx container. I still need to make the use of my different tab if I really wanted to perform any operations on my local host. So if I try to so again, if I try to terminate this particular container, I have terminated this container, right? So you can see now Nginx is no longer running. Only container which is running as of now is the Alpine one. So I will leave that particular container like that only. So if I try to run the Nginx container in a detached mode, we still will be able to access our shell prompt for our local host, right? So for example, docker run -d, I would say -p, 80, 85 and 80 on the container side, and I will again be making the use of the same image Nginx. So you can see that I am able to access my shell prompt for my local host because I am running the container in a detached mode. Docker ps. We should be able to see that our Alpine and Nginx, both the containers are still running, but I am still able to access my shell prompt. So that's what we mean. So let's say if I try to establish a connection once again, or let me open my new tab, and again, so you can see we have established the connection. So if I still want to see the let's say the logs of the Nginx container, how would I do that? So let me do D933. So you can see that I am still able to access the logs of the Nginx container. You can see the HTTP response 304, 304, and I still have access to my shell for the local host. So that is, we are trying to differentiate the difference when we run the containers in a detached mode or not, right? So we have successfully demonstrated that. See you in the next time.